Well, as we've been discussing, the threat of political violence still hangs over the country, nearly 4 years after a violent mob stormed the U.S. Capitol and tried to overturn the will of the voters. With just one day left of voting, what lessons have we learned, and how does the threat compare to the last cycle? Joining us now is Mary McCord. She's a former acting assistant attorney general for national security, now teaches at Georgetown Law School. Good to see you, Mary.
Nice to be here.
So law enforcement, we know, is on alert for Election Day. We've seen election offices and other locations ramping up security. How worried are you about violence on Election Day or the days to follow?
I'm more worried about the days to follow. Many things have come into play to protect voters and election workers on Election Day. First of all, unlike 4 years ago, I mean, we've seen this movie before, right? So election officials at the local level, at the state level, law enforcement, across parties, community organizations, mayors have all worked together really over these 4 years to make sure that they can provide a safe voting venue, not only for the voters, but also for the poll workers, right? And if that means more security, they have it. If it means different facets of law enforcement presence, again, carefully so it doesn't intimidate voters, because law enforcement and voting sometimes itself can be intimidation, but they've worked, individually, community by community, to create plans that will work. I also think that the effect of over 1,500 prosecutions coming out of the January 6th attack has been a real deterrent for those who would otherwise maybe think about engaging in armed and even unarmed forms of voter intimidation. There's been tons and tons of, public education and statements and people in positions of authority talking about voter intimidation. DOJ has been forward-leading, and a lot of these people, I think, they see others who've gotten in trouble. That wasn't voter intimidation, that was a violent attack. But still, they know things could cross the line. I'm more worried about after the election.
Well, let me ask you about the scenario that Nick reported on as well. It's likely we may not have a result on the night in the presidential election. If former President Trump comes out and declares victory, Elon Musk, his supporter, amplifies that on X. Does that change or alter the potential for violence?
So this is exactly what I think why I'm more worried about the post-election period, particularly during the time of uncertainty, because as you said, and as we saw in 2020, Donald Trump, I think, will, as he did before, come out and say he won in a landslide, the voting should stop, and that votes counted after this period are fraudulent. He'll attack mail-in voting, absentee voting, drop boxes, election workers, etc. And and he will be aided because we know from Nick's reporting and from the intelligence community's warnings that Russia and Iran and China, all our adversaries, have an interest in seeding additional false information that, frankly, we as Americans do a great job of propounding and spreading. And those false narratives are what become the justification for people to engage in political violence. That's what we saw in 2020. That's what led to January 6th. And that might be individual acts, it might be physical, it might be threats, intimidation, harassment, it might be pressuring election officials not to certify, governors not to certify, state legislatures to try to somehow take their own action and send up their own slates of electors. All of those are things that could happen if this false narrative spreads and people either believe it or pretend to believe it.
There's been some reporting and tracking of online chatter, in particular in the kinds of social media platforms that are very lightly moderated, where we know a lot of far-right and extremist groups gather and share information, like Telegram and Gab. There was one nonprofit that said in October that election denialism increased by 317% on Telegram, by 105% on Gab. How likely is that online chatter to fuel real-world violence or action of any kind?
So what we're not seeing as much of, or I should say I get all my information through researchers, right? Like, I'm a lawyer and a former prosecutor and former national security official, but I talk with researchers regularly. And what we are not seeing is actual mobilization, logistics, planning. Now, some of that could be because there's more operational security now than there was back in 2020. They're more careful about not speaking on public forums and public chat rooms about those plans. But still, if it was big enough and massive enough, these kind of things would start to leak out. So I do think there's probably planning going on, again, at that hyper-local level, and there will be some disruptions tomorrow and disruptions going forward, but something massive like a January 6th we're not seeing that kind of mobilization.
Mary, briefly before we let you go, people want to know that they can vote and vote safely, and they're worried about what's ahead. What would you say to folks out there as we head into this last day of voting?
Yeah, I do not think voters should be concerned about going to the polls tomorrow, but even armed groups who have agitated online, a lot of it is all talk. We see very little uptick in those who actually want to show up, and again, they are worried about prosecution. I think this election will be safe for voters. I think it'll be secure in terms of the results, and we just have to take a breath and wait for those results to come.
Good advice. Mary McCord, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.